I was supposed to ask, though, if we have changes to the
We
agenda.
can do
this
that as we
evening.
go along.
All right, we will do that as we go along. So we will not delay with our report to the board. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Diana Stotler of the Novi Community School District, who is an instructional coach, and April Stevenson, who's head of Information Services for the Novi Public Library, will update the Board of Education on the 2017 summer reading program that was held in conjunction with the Novi Public Library. Ms. Stotler and Ms. Stevens.
Well, good evening. Good evening, Dr. Matthews, Dr. Weber, and school board members. As Dr. Matthews said, I am Diana Stotler, one of our instructional coaches within the district, and with me is April Stevenson. And we wanted to come before you this evening to just share with you about our summer reading program. We also have this evening a few other librarians that April will introduce, but we are excited to have Lindsay, Kathleen, and Linda with us this evening to share about the summer, this past summer. I do want to take a moment and give a shout out to Julie Farkas, the Novi Library Director, for her continued support and enthusiasm as we continue to grow our partnership together. In keeping with the theme, as you can see on the screen, of Novi Pride, we are here to highlight for you tonight the partnership between the library and the school district. We just completed our 6th summer of our joint reading program together. This united effort helps us to promote reading within and join our efforts together with the library, a common summer reading program for actually people of all ages. And this evening, we're going to share with you what occurred this past summer.
Okay, I just want to take a moment to reflect on the continued strength of this partnership throughout the year. As you'll see on the screen, we have listed a number of things that we do together. We come for Professional Development Day, we offer team space, coffee with our superintendent, parent-to-parent book discussion. We host an annual breakfast for our media specialists as well as our principals to come and thank you for all that you do. Walk to School Day, and other things that are on there as well. A few things that I did not list that we are currently working on, which would be our Enable project, where we are partnering with the schools, the robotics team, and as well as some of the elementaries to create around 200 prosthetic hands with our 3D printers by the end of the school year. So a very exciting project that we're very happy to be working on. Among some other things, our geography bee as well. But one of the biggest things that we have been working on for the last year is a partnership that this brought about 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program, which was launched at the same time that your Early Childhood Education Center opened. We're very happy to let you know that in just over a year, over 500 children are currently registered for this program. And so very exciting. In fact, we've already had over a dozen in 1 year read 1,000 books. So this is really just a fantastic program. And also what came about from this is that the library has decided to hire an early literacy librarian. And this person, who is not here tonight, Emily Brush, but she's going to be providing early literacy experiences and support to parents, caregivers, and teachers to develop school-age readers and lifelong learners. So we're very excited about that, all stemming from this wonderful partnership.
All right. And back by...
If I could, I just want to make a comment about that early literacy and the 1,000 book program. That's an established program that has gone on in many school districts. One I'm very familiar with is in Monroe, where I've done some consulting work with them. And I must tell you that although it's an established program in Monroe, our enrollment numbers just in 1 year has surpassed a program that's been established over the last 7 years. So this is really a great thing, and it's great that you're now aligned with our Early Childhood Education Center to make that work.
Great perspective, Dennis. Thanks for sharing that.
Thank you. Backed by popular demand is giving books away. So every June, with the continuous financial support from the district, I want to say that we are excited that we are able to give a certain special population of students within our district that are economically disadvantaged or that receive literacy support at the K-6 level. They receive books every June to take home, and they are theirs to keep. As you can see on the board, that's some of the new titles they received. We choose books that are at the students' reading range, and they are allowed to come in and choose books. K4, they receive 4 brand new books, and at the 5-6 level, they receive 2 brand new chapter books of their choosing. Also, we've worked with the library and other organizations across the city that when they have given us some gently used donated books, we have also brought those in as well, and students receive 2 to 3 additional books. So they walk home at least with 6 to 8 books every summer that theirs to keep. The literacy team across the district every June, we divide up those efforts and we bring students in and let them book shop. So part of the joy for myself and the part I enjoy that highlights my year is for me to be able to give books away every June and see kids with that big smile and their excitement. So we appreciate your continued support that we can continue to instill that love of learning and reading within our students.
So on that note, I would like to introduce the creative team behind our summer reading program, our NPO librarians, Kathleen Alberga, Linda Bruin, and Lindsay Fricky.
Hi, I'm Linda Bruin. Our summer reading theme last year for 2017 was Build a Better World. And kindergarten through 4th graders got to fill out a form. They had to read 20 hours. And then tweens, which were 4th grade through 6th grade, had to read 24 hours. And then the teens, which were 7th grade to 12th grade, had to read 3 books and then were encouraged to do 5 activities.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Alberga. We're going to talk a few stats now. As you can see, the arrow indicates that we had an increase in participants from 2016 to 2017. We attribute this number going up due to the length of the summer reading program. In 2016, it was a 7-week program. In 2017, we decided to extend it, and it was a 12-week program. And we hope to do that again in 2018.
And I am Lindsay Fricky, and we're going to talk more about the celebrations and what happens when they actually finish the program. So the kids who are in kindergarten through 6th grade, if they finish the summer reading program, they get to go to Paradise Park, which is a wonderful partnership that they have with the library. And all the kids get to attend and play games there, all for free of charge. And then the teens who are in 7th through 12th grade, if they complete their summer reading program, we hold an after-hours event for them where they're locked in the library and they have all kind of fun. We do pizza, ice cream, and all kind of games for them, like escape rooms, stuff like that.
Wow.
Some highlights of our visits to the schools. With the librarians, it's all about having fun, bringing the fun to the kids and getting them fired up to read. So our theme last year was Build a Better World, and we built in our blockhead hard hats, and we had a lot of fun with that. We offered AR quizzes for the children to take at the library during the summer while school was closed, and we encouraged the children to read an extra 10 hours over and above our requirements so that they could continue reading until school began. And then next year,
They are fun.
let's see if we can get this going. We're getting the band back together on a mission from the library. Stay tuned for more fun. Coming 2018, Libraries Rock.
Boy, wonderful, wonderful. Do people have questions? Mr.
Who has more fun with this, the librarians or the kids?
Yeah. Mrs. Globzinski.
Just 2 things. I did have a chance to see your kickoff announcement assembly at Parkview last spring. and appreciated the creativity and the extra time and effort it takes for you guys to really encourage the kids and set the stage well. So thank you for that extra time. And I noticed on the slide that you listed 2,362 Novi children participating in the program, all the ages. I'm just curious if you track how many of those are actually in Novi, because I'm assuming you might attract students from other areas.
Yeah, so we accept all students,
Right.
but we track by the school, so we know how many are at each school, and reports are sent to each of the media specialists regarding how many kids, especially because they do read above and beyond. It helps
Yeah.
with getting a party for them as well.
Thank you.
Well, and as a follow-up to that question, are we then kind of looking to see if those kids, I was at the MASB conference and they had a thing on the summer reading slide, and I just wonder if we track kids to see if they have slipped.
I'll let Ms. Stotler
Okay,
answer
Ms.
that question.
Stotler, could you answer that question?
Yeah, so over the years, I have worked with Nick Kyler when he was here, and now Jeff Dinkelman. We do look at the fall, the spring NWA and then the fall,
Okay.
but we haven't tracked it by every student. We do it as a random, and so it's just many variables within there. I think there's other ways that we can continue to look at data, and as we start using more programs, that would help us as well. So.
Yeah.
It's usually we have seen that there is an increase or a maintaining.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, if nobody has anything, I just want to say, libraries don't look like you think librarians look, because you guys are not the typical librarian, I don't think. And then the other thing I wanted to say is, I know I was at the MASB conference this past weekend, and they had a whole presentation on the summer reading slide and how to stop it. And I didn't go to it. I talked to somebody afterwards, and they said, "Oh, it just seems so expensive." I said, "Well, we have this wonderful partnership with our library," and they were super interested in finding out more about it. So I thought, maybe next year we will be presenting at the MASB.
We'll go on the road.
Go on the road. Take
We'll go
the
and
show on the
travel
road. So I think it's something that more districts need to know. I think at this point in time, because you guys have been such great partners with us, we take that a little bit for granted, and I don't think we should do that, because I think it's unusual for districts to have such a very strong partnership with the library. So thank you for being here and for doing what you do, and I look forward to the band getting back together. I like the little teaser. It's got me interested. And
They have one more slide.
yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank yous. Go ahead.
We just want to give out our shout outs, our thank yous, especially to our media specialists who really help to facilitate those every spring. And certainly Diana for pulling all of those times and getting everyone together on that. The teachers, the principals, the administration, and certainly the school board, because without all of you, it couldn't happen. Our wonderful staff, not only the librarians, but support services, all of those books that are coming in and going out and shelving, so all of that. The community, parents, caregivers, because without them, the reading doesn't happen. Certainly Jeff and Teresa Wainwright of Paradise Park, because that is a huge, huge donation.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, our friends, 12 Oaks Mall, Everbrook Academy in Town and Country. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, for creating lifelong learners in our little bitty students up to our adults. We do really appreciate that assistance. I know our teachers appreciate it too. So. Next, we have our consent items. Dr. Matthews.
I would, with the board's permission, like to add one item to the consent agenda, which is a field trip, which is the Novi High School hockey team will be traveling to Muskegon this weekend for a tournament. It is one they did 2 years ago, and so it was within the board guidelines to only have to come to one meeting. There is an issue related to the timeliness of this, and I understand that. I sent the board an email earlier today addressing that, but if, with the board's permission, under field trips, I would like to add the hockey team trip to Muskegon as part of the consent agenda.
I'll support that.
Do we need to have a vote on that? I don't believe
I don't believe
I think
so.
we can add it with the support. So I don't think, does anybody have an issue with adding that? All right, so we will go ahead and add that. So I would entertain a motion for our consent items. Mr. Mena?
Yeah, motion to approve consent item A and B plus the addition of the Novi hockey trip.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Mena and supported by Mrs. Glebzinski. Is there any discussion on either of the items? Mr. Cook?
I just noticed this, but last week in the personnel report, the recommendations were coming from Carol Diglio, and she had resigned or retired 2 days before that. So could we get Mr. Kinzer's name on it?
Well, that was, it will be in our next,
That's part of the consent agenda is
Oh,
the
he's talking about minutes.
minutes.
oh, the minutes, thank you. Yeah, so we'd like to amend that because we would like you to be,
I apologize for not seeing that until now, Mr. Kinzer.
okay.
So if we could accept the consent items as amended.
Support.
Okay, so,
We will make that change.
okay. It's been moved by Mr. Cook and Mr. Mena, and supported by Mrs. Glebzinski, to accept the consent items with the change of the name in our minutes for our meeting. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Same. Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have our action items. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms.
Personnel report,
Murphy.
excuse me.
And I will turn to Mr. Kinzer to present tonight's personnel report.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Tonight, we're requesting approval for 5 new hires, 4 of them teachers and 1 is a special education parapro. First, the teachers, Jennifer Beck. This is a literacy interventionist position at Novi Woods. Nicholas Cole, this is a math position at the high school. Teresa Rybar, another literacy interventionist position. This one will be at Deerfield and at Orchard Hills. Carolyn McKibben, and this is a science position at Novi Middle School. And then the special education pro is Priyanka Singh, and this will be at Novi Meadows.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion. Mrs. Glebzinski?
Motion to approve personnel recommendations as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mr. Cook. Are there questions? Mr. O'Connor?
Just for future reports, Mrs. Giglio started giving us years of experience and also the steps given during those hires. It's fine for this one, but just in the future, if you could include that with the information, that'd be great.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Cook?
On top of that, I had also asked a couple of times, it had not happened, but could we get their certifications, if they're certificated in math or physics or something like that, included in this? If we're hiring a math teacher that's got a certification in physics, it'd be helpful to know. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. And I know that there were a couple questions about Mr. Cole, who it doesn't appear on our, he didn't get a teaching,
He started as a
teaching degree.
He started as a mechanical engineer.
Right.
And through Schoolcraft College Alternative Certification Program was certified. And his background college courses allow him to be certified in math.
Wonderful. And he's the replacement, and so is Ms. McKibben, correct? And then the other 2 are new positions?
Correct.
All right. All right, we have, it's been moved and supported.
One other quick question. We have one parapro listed on this, or do we, for special ed, or how are we doing on filling the other positions?
I spoke with Mrs. Patel about that, and we will have 2 other, there are 2 other parapro positions that we're still trying to fill as well as 1 special education teacher. And she's working through the process to fill all of those.
Okay, yeah, that's an area of high need.
It is
for
challenging.
us, so it's challenging. Thank you.
All right. Well, it has been moved and supported, so I would call the question. All those in favor of accepting personnel report as presented, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Next, we have our superintendent evaluation. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Tonight, we are presenting the superintendent evaluation tool for the board to consider. This is the same tool that was used last year. Districts must select a tool that's been identified by the Michigan Council on Educator Effectiveness that has a research base and that provides both the board and the superintendent with clearly defined outcomes. The Novi Community School District Board of Education met several times with me to review the tool, identify goals, and to agree on artifacts that will be presented to support the evaluation. So tonight, we come to have a conversation about those two items. Some of the artifacts probably need to be updated, some in the tool piece, and also I know Mr. O'Connor has given us some information on the percentages of the different categories in the tool. And so tonight, this is an action item, but certainly can, all of it or a piece of it can be approved tonight, depending on the board's pleasure.
All right. Mrs. Kuzensky. Oh,
Well, you were probably asking for motion. I'm not ready to make a motion,
no,
so I was going to ask a
yeah,
question.
no, I think we should ask a question. I would just say that my preference would be to perhaps adopt the progress toward district goals. I know you guys worked really hard on those last week, and obviously we want to give some solidity to the direction that we're headed with those. And I appreciate tremendously, I have to say, I listened to the tape. It was very clear. Everybody spoke very clearly, and it was good to hear the discussion that took place around that. And then perhaps the superintendent evaluation tool may need to wait until the first meeting in December for approval. I know that it's not in there in the same form. The district goals aren't all in there in the same form. There were some little glitches with adding some of the artifacts to the tool as well. So with the board's permission, I would like to entertain a motion to perhaps accept the progress toward district-wide goals, and then we can have additional discussion on the tool. Would that be acceptable to the board? Does that sound reasonable? Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the progress toward district-wide goals. Mrs. Glebzinski.
So moved.
Okay, is there support? Okay, it's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mrs. Hood to approve the progress toward district-wide goals document. Is there discussion on that? Mr. O'Connor.
So I just have a couple of questions, and Dr. Matthews, I emailed you earlier in the week. I know you were out of town. One of my concerns with moving forward with these objectives is the fact that some of the baselines haven't been identified
Correct.
yet. And whether it's the makerspace, the second step, the class sizes, welcome standards. I'm just concerned, is it fair to you that we proceed without those baselines when we really don't know what the target is and then what the results could be, especially when we're looking at that scale?
Mhm.
I mean, are you comfortable with proceeding?
I
Because by not having the baselines, it's hard to put together the actual scale system.
I agree with that perspective. I also have confidence that, based on the discussions that we've had so far this year surrounding these goals, that as we move forward, if it becomes clear that some of those, once the baselines are established, if we would need to adjust those scales, that the board and I could have some discussion about that. But at this point, I feel comfortable with the ranges that are there, with the understanding that, as we work collaboratively, if we see a need to change that, we could move to change that in the spring.
I would recommend that we just have that flexibility, because I just think it's fair for you and also fair to us as a board.
And I appreciate that, Mr. O'Connor.
The other question I had is, I know that a lot of what you're focusing on with the growth and the student growth and student achievement, the student growth plan is still a work in progress, but are we making that part of the 25%?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the state mandate.
Correct.
Okay. So are you comfortable having growth data being measured with growth data with that M-STEP? Because, that M-STEP data, from my perspective, is really more one point in time. They're not consistent, and it really doesn't help you or your staff in terms of moving from one point to another. To me, it's more of an achievement measurement.
The state is trying to, or is at least suggesting, that they're able to take all the students, for example, in fourth grade who took the M-STEP in third grade, and through their psychometric kind of data are able to identify, given the parameters, if these students made above average growth, or below average growth. And so in that sense, it is a growth measure. They've only done it 1 year, and we don't have a second year at this point. But I feel confident that the state is trying to use that in both a growth manner and an achievement manner at this point.
Do you think it's fair to you? I guess from my perspective, I'm more comfortable based on what you and your staff have said that the NWEA really gives us that consistent, spring, fall, so that we can measure. I just want to be fair to you in terms of your evaluation, because I just don't trust the staff.
I appreciate that, and what I would say is that at this point, I would leave it in this tool, the goals that we've established. Once the second year comes out, the state has said it's coming out soon. Once we see that data, if it becomes obvious that it's not a good measure for us, we would come back to the board and ask the board to revise that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Are there additional questions, Mr. Cook?
I have a little concern on the scale that we're using for student achievement. The data you sent out, only 3 of the classes didn't achieve, you wouldn't have achieved a 4 in for the last couple of years. My feeling is that should be the area of a 3. We won't give our elementary students a 4 in anything. It's hard to go above and beyond, and I feel that a 4 should be going above and beyond. So if we're already scoring 95 percentile in our achievements on the NWEAs, then leave that at a 3 and then make 98% 4. That's my personal feeling. I just, you're already there.
I would, part of the feedback is on the NWA, the 50th percentile is at grade level. And so, part of the discussion with the board is how far above grade level is satisfactory. If we're at the 85th, 89th percentile is effective, that's almost one standard deviation above grade level, and at some point, if you're gonna hold me responsible that 98% of the students will be better than or equal to every other student in the United States, I think that's kind of an unrealistic goal.
Mrs. Klipsinski. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mena and then Mrs. Klipsinski. You have your-
Just a very small point. On some of these scales, and I just noticed this, there's still like a 1% gap between either effective and highly effective or ineffective and minimally effective. I think, for example, when you say less than 59%, it should be less than 60% because it takes 60%. So if we can just...
Sure, we can,
Yeah, there's just a gap in there that needs to be closed.
Yep.
And Mrs. Klipsinski.
Yeah, I would be concerned to penalize the superintendent for a high-achieving district. I mean, if we're consistently performing, there's a point where I don't think it's fair to raise the bar any higher. This certainly says we have an expectation that we're not going down, right? And that's important from year to year. So I'm comfortable with the percentile, the way you've listed them for achievement now.
I would support that as long as the expectation is that we're not going down.
Right.
Right.
Because in some of the areas last year we were, so that's really where we need to shore it up.
Right.
All right, so.
Yeah,
that's a feedback
understand.
on that. All right. It has been moved and supported to accept the progress toward district goals document. I'd like to call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. So we will go back now to the superintendent tool. Can we have a brief discussion about that, or should we move that into information discussion?
I think we could talk about it now if you want.
I think that makes sense because it's all kind of connected. So you gave us some additional information, Mr.
Right,
O'Connor.
I'd like to share this with you. I've been, this whole mystic weighting percentages and trying to get answers, and quite frankly, not getting a straight answer from the MASB, which I've just been disappointed with, but I believe this email sort of gives us one step in the right direction. And the issue really has been from the beginning is how do we use weighted averages within the MASB tool? Currently, they've got professional practice at 65%, progress toward district goals at 10%, and student growth is the 25%, which is state mandated. And, you know, I've been calling for a shift and hoping to have some kind of shift, and I believe, you know, most of the people at this table do want to see a heavier emphasis on district goals. I mean, the document that we just approved, we just had 3 separate meetings on it. So what I'd like to do is propose, and again, if we're going to vote on this in December, this is just food for thought. What I'd like to propose for this year is that we shift it 15%, and we make professional practice 50%. Student growth is still 25% because that's state mandated, but then we up the progress toward district goals to 25%. So that's 50, 25, and 25. And the support for this is really in the email. If you get a chance to read the email, and again, since we're not voting on this till December, please, you know, do some investigation. But the email says that the MASB already is shifting 15% of the professional practice in 2018, 2019 to compensate for student growth going to 40%. Now, I was given no rationale for that. You can read the email why, I don't know. All they said was it's important that the tool there's validity and it's research based, which I agree with. I mean, I'm not interested in changing the content of the tool. I'm interested in changing the weights. But for some reason, they've arbitrarily just changed it to 50, 40, and 10 in 2018, 2019. So since they can arbitrarily, and they're suggesting that, it's not a mandate. So since they're already changing their weights by 15%, I'm proposing that we move it up a year, and let's make professional practice 50%, which is what they're suggesting in 2018-19, and then take that 15% and put it toward our district goals.
One piece of clarification, you know, I would not be opposed to that, but the 18-19 40% is state mandated.
That's correct.
Right, and so, I think you are correct in they're shifting that without any substantial research base behind it.
I think they're doing it to fit the move up from 25% to 40%.
That's why they're doing it, and it does seem somewhat arbitrary. And so if you know, the board wants the 50, 25, 25, you know, as long as that's known going into the process, I think that's fair to me and fair to the board as well.
I would just like to make a comment on that, because the progress towards district goals, some of those goals are directly related to student growth, right? So then are we
Measuring
well, there's
twice.
a separate student growth model that Dr. Matthews, I asked that question earlier, that he's working on. That's really the 25%.
Okay.
That student growth model is what is mandated by the state this year at 25%.
Correct.
Next year at 40%.
40%.
It's the other 60% next year that we're talking about, and the other 75% this year that we're talking about.
And the dilemma with the student growth piece is that the state says it has to be 25%, but doesn't tell you what it's supposed to look like.
Correct.
For anybody, teachers or administrators.
I know. It's yes.
And one other thing, there are other mandates that you have to be that have to be included, but their weights are not mandated.
Correct.
You know, surveys, feedback, likes of that, but there's no weighted mandate on them. The only weighted mandate is on student growth.
And I would agree, Dr. Matthews, next year that there might be a dilemma, obviously, with the 40% having to be state mandated student growth. I'd rather have that debate next year. Let's get this off the table, because I don't think the MASB really has anything substantial in terms of the weighted average. I think they're making it up. So, you know, right now we know that they're moving at 15%, so why not take advantage of that for this year?
Okay,
we can have that discussion next year.
Your proposal is that the student growth piece stays 25%.
That's state mandated, so
Right.
that has to, yes.
Right, professional practice.
50.
Would be 50%.
50, and progress toward district goals 25%. Okay, this is kind of new information to a lot of us this evening. I think maybe
We're not adopting it tonight.
No, we won't be
Okay.
adopting it tonight, but just discussion tonight. So I appreciate you following up with that, Mr. O'Connor, and getting some additional information. I know that local control piece is something that's been taken away to a certain extent in that, so think let's process that maybe a little bit. If there's additional questions about that or additional information that people have, if they could share that information with both Dr. Matthews and the board this week.
Just
Or
one
with
other item,
the next couple
reading the emails that Mr. O'Connor provided, the weighting that the MASB is using and justifying for the 40% is 50% inputs and 50% outputs. So they're including the student growth as the outputs, the district goals as the outputs, and they're also including the professional development and professional practices as 50% of inputs. So by going to the 25, 25, and 50, you are also weighted the 50-50 inputs and outputs this year.
Okay. Okay. Mrs. Glebzinski.
Yeah, I need to think about this, and I want to look at the last evaluation and kind of see if we were to switch, how that would have impacted what we had, our results. So I'll be doing that or having Willie help me do that, maybe, before the next meeting. But one thing that I would suggest is that in January, when we have our organizational meeting, that we potentially have an ad hoc committee whose responsibility is the superintendent tool. That they take the ownership with that and then, make a recommendation long before we start planning for goals
18.
for the next, So,
I think that does make sense. All right.
For what it's worth, I attended the Oakland County Legislative Committee meeting last night. And even though we're behind, we are way far ahead. Most districts in Oakland County, we are extremely ahead. They're going through their evaluation of last year next week. So while we're behind, we're way ahead.
Wow. You're full of great perspectives tonight, Mr. O'Connor. I appreciate that, because it does feel like we're a little behind. So knowing that we're in good shape, relatively speaking, that's always good to hear. All right, next is our bid package number 9. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. On October 19th, 2017, the bids for the district-wide parking lot lighting replacements, interior and exterior building lighting, mechanical HVAC work at Novi Meadows and Novi High School fire alarm system were opened and publicly read aloud. The bids presented tonight have been analyzed and contractors have been interviewed. Attached is a letter of recommendation from McCarthy and Smith, construction manager, including a detailed listing of the recommended contract awards and full bid tabulation by bid division. All bids recommended for award are the lowest possible qualified bid. The grand total of bids recommended for award is $1,143,888, which includes base bid and performance bond amounts. The projects are planned expenditures of the 2014 capital projects funds. These bids were presented at the November 2nd, 2017 board meeting for information and discussion. And tonight, Ms. Minnick is here, and also Doug Underwood from McCarthy and Smith if you have additional questions before the board votes on the recommendation.
Okay, I would like to entertain a motion first. Mrs. Glebzinski.
I move that in the best interest of the Novi Community School District, the bids for the projects as fully detailed and itemized in the attachments be awarded to the companies and in the amounts listed in the attached recommendation letter from McCarthy and Smith for a total award of $1,143,888, with the form of contract included in the bid documents and contingent upon each contractor meeting the provisions of the bid specifications requiring delivery of surety. Further, that the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations be authorized to expend the funds from the 2014 Capital Projects Fund.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Glebzinski and supported by Mr. Cook. Is there any additional discussion on this bid package? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries 6-0.
Mr. Underwood, thanks for being here this evening.
Yes, thank you for being here again. And next, we will move on to our information and discussion. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I am pleased this evening to turn this over to Dr. Weber.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. Mr. Pulaski, if you'd like to just be ready for any questions, it might be great. Thanks for your patience, and I appreciate it. Mr. Brent Pulaski, a mathematics teacher at Novi High School, would like to propose that Novi High School begin offering a medical math course for students beginning in the fall of 2018 at Novi High School. The Michigan Merit Curriculum requires students to complete math through Algebra 2 and have a mathematics-related credit or experience during their senior year.
Medical math would help students deepen their algebra skills before moving to a higher level course. It would strengthen these skills in the context of relevant career embedded math. Currently, there are over 400 Novi students who participate in HOSA, many of whom specifically choose to compete in medical math. This is an opportunity to pair the student interest with the math skills that will help them in the future. This comes to the board tonight as information and discussion, and will come back before the board for approval on December 7th, 2017. Questions, comments, or wonderings?
All right. Mrs. Blazinski.
I did come over to the ESB yesterday to look through the math books because I was curious about what the content would be and the level of difficulty, frankly, in terms of credit for a senior. And I really liked the case studies in one of the textbooks, scenarios that they gave students, and they had to figure out in what order they needed to accomplish tasks and how to calculate the tasks, which is great. I am a bit confused on who the target market is for this class.
Sure.
And I'll just leave it at that.
The
I
target
do have
market
another question after
would really
that.
be of course, any student that chooses it in that piece, whether their interest is going into medical profession itself, as we have HOSA and many, many kids in our high school building who are targeting the the medical career to begin with. This would deepen that piece of it. Some kids may add this to the courses they already have to give them help or to prepare them for the assessments. But Mr. Polonsky, if you'd like to, if I missed anything, feel free to jump up there. If not,
Yes, please.
I would say our main purpose for the class and the students we'd be targeting are those students that have passed Algebra 2, but their algebra skills are still a little weak, and they really have a hard time taking pre-calculus or statistics or IB math. I teach pre-calculus, and so I get a number of those students in my pre-calculus class, and we do an assessment of their algebra skills the first week of school. And when we find out we have a number of students with weak skills, and we say, maybe this class might be a little overwhelming for you, then the question is, well, what can I take? And we really don't have many good answers. And so this would be, the medical math would be something that we would hope those students could take. The algebra would be right at their level. It would be something more hands-on and real-life application. So we're really after those students that are looking for a fourth-year math class, but maybe whose skills aren't ready for pre-calc or calc or statistics.
Do you have a
What made
number?
me, I'm sorry.
A number of that you would anticipate would be eligible for, or interested, or recommended for such a course?
I don't have a set number at this time. I know in my 2 pre-calculus classes right now, I probably have in each one 5, 6, 7 kids in each who are really struggling right now. And that's just mine. I know there's some other sections of it as well. And then like Dr. Weber said, we also have 400 students taking HOSA right now who are interested in the medical field. So we're assuming some of those would like it as well.
The one thing is really appealing to me is the fact that it's applied math, so students get to see, I learned what the formula is, but now I get to see how it's actually used in the real world. But of course my brain was like, well, there are lots of areas where math is applied and it's just not medical. For example, in the business world and in personal finance, understanding your interest rate on credit cards and mortgage rates and insurance. And so I'm thinking, applied math, but could we show it in a lot of careers and not just the medical? And obviously you've done a lot of research and come up with a great program, but I'm thinking, what if a student sees, medical math, I'm not interested in medical math. Is there something for me, that allows me to apply it if I'm not going that other track? So just food for thought. The one thing I noticed is you had the comment about University of Michigan recognizes this as a senior math class. Are there other is that like the high bar? So we would expect other public universities in Western Michigan?
Yes.
Well, are like the other schools and private colleges in Michigan, will they accept it as well?
I don't know at this time. When I met with the counselors as we were preparing this, they had just brought that up, that Mr. Zielinski, our counselor at that time, had already contacted Michigan State University and U of M about whether they would accept this as a fourth-year math course. Only at that time had Michigan replied back. So that's all we had at that time.
So, okay.
If you get that information before our next board meeting where we'll be
Sure.
Looking at this, that would be really helpful to have. If there's other colleges, I think that would be helpful. Mr. O'Connor.
To answer Mrs. Budzinski's concern, I believe some math courses or business math cover a lot of those things, right, in terms of financial calculations and life insurance and all those kinds of things. So I believe that's in our curriculum already, is it not?
It is.
It just
But
perhaps not
yeah,
in this
if you're
course.
looking at a fourth-year math class, could there be other things that would qualify too, is kind of my question.
I think the issue is, if the college would recognize it as a math course. I mean, we give students a math credit for taking finance, for example.
Okay.
But when they apply to college, the college won't accept that as a math course. They would
Okay.
accept it as a business course. So this is one that would count as a fourth-year math course.
Mr. O'Connor?
I think this is a great idea. I mean, whether it's the 400 kids in Tulsa or not, I mean, if we look at our robotics, the engineering, the medical, that when we're talking about developing our kids for 21st century career, I mean, those are the areas of growth. And I just think this is a great way to meet a need, especially if the kids aren't ready for trig or pre-calc. I think this is a wonderful idea. And I think it's great. It's even better that the university is recognizing it as a math course, because that is, I can see that as a pitfall. Somebody will take what we call a math course, but it doesn't give you the credit in college. So I just think this is a wonderful idea. I mean, it's targeted. It really it will meet the needs of 400 kids, and it's where growth careers are, and that's really how we need to target our curriculum. So I love it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. O'Connor. Mr. Cook, did you have a question?
Yeah, well, I like that you're tying this to our extracurricular HOSA. I like that it's applied math. A lot of things I like about this. But when you state that you have a lot of kids coming into pre-calc and stuff that aren't prepared, have we looked at shoring up the baseline, shoring up the Algebra 1 and Algebra 2s so that they are more prepared? Adding a course to patch a weakness can, first thing I look at is where's that weakness and why can't we fix that weakness?
I look at the metrics of where kids are performing in math in the county and the national level, and it's hard to get much higher. The piece that I see is that we're providing an option, as Mr. O'Connor said as well, that fits in with kids in going into a certain area. There's also a level in mathematics where kids get to. Mr. Polonsky, you've dedicated your entire life in the service of public education, teaching math to kids, not only in our district but other districts. There are thresholds that students get to in math, that it's not so much about their inability or a weakness there, but a threshold that they arrive at, whether that is what the level of work they're willing to do or the mathematical abilities they have. Could you speak to that, please?
I always share that story with the kids, too, in terms of my own experience. I was really good at math, and I took it through my first couple years at college, and I hit differential equations. I think it was my junior year in college, and I said, that's where I need to be done. I got through it, I survived it, but I would have a hard time explaining what it was that we did. And so that's a story I always share with some of our students when they're getting frustrated, and it's just, at some point you're probably going to hit your level. I hit mine here, yours might be somewhere else. So.
I could speak to that level, because mine was lower than that. I don't think Mr. Cook probably has a low level of math skill. My guess is yours is very high.
I had very high frustration until I got to differential equations.
See, there you go.
But my question I wasn't questioning that we had high achieving students. I know we have high achieving students. You're stating that you're coming up with this course because you're finding a lot of students going to the next level who aren't prepared because of the prerequisites. So the question I have is, shouldn't we fix the prerequisites even though the kids might be frustrated or whatever, or isn't there something else we can do rather than adding another course? And neither one of those explanations really answered my question, and I'll leave it at that, but if you can't tow a vehicle down the road because it weighs too much, you either make it lighter or you get more horsepower in front of it. You put more horses in front of it. So if your kids aren't where you expect them to be at that point in time, you fix why they're not getting there. Okay? I'm not saying I don't like the course. I'm saying I love the course. I love the application and supporting some of the other students, but when you're using that kids are coming into your pre-calculus class unprepared or unable to do it, there's the root cause and the root problem. And let's look at fixing that.
I actually was going to address that because I only finished algebra in high school. Don't have a math mind, and quite honestly, it was that even getting to that, finishing that was difficult for me. I did test out and got into calculus in college. Don't ask me how. I guessed at every answer, and without someone's help, I wouldn't have made it through that class. But I reached that plateau. Like it was just like I'm great at English. I'm great at social sciences. But the other piece of it was not for me. I guess I am curious about how you're going to market this, though. If you're going to call it medical math, and you've got kids that maybe aren't thinking that they have a medical mind because their math, like, how are you going to market it so that you can get those kids that maybe are struggling to get over the hump, like into that pre-calc, because that's a big jump. I think that's a big jump. Well, it was for me. Probably not for everyone, but for me it was. I'll be completely honest. So getting kids to that point, how are you going to market it so that those kids do understand that it's for them? It's not just if you want to be in the medical field. It's really applied, and it's something that will help you practically learn algebra.
I think a big part of it will be in the winter when we start registration. I know in the past, Maggie Lane would go visit all the math courses, all the math classes, and she would tell students what their options were for the classes that they could take the following year. I assume that will probably be me doing that this year, and I know when I go to all the Algebra 2 classes, that will be something that I will address. Like we, and I don't know if this will address Mr. Cook's question, but just because someone has passed Algebra 2 with a C or a D doesn't mean they're ready to go on. Yes, they met the prerequisite, they passed, but they're still weak in some areas, and they tend to struggle in those higher math courses. So, again, we would go and we would talk to the Algebra 2 teachers and let those students know that they have a good option for them. If they're barely making it through Algebra 2, there's a good option for you the following year.
So right now, really, the only options are pre-calc and statistics.
And IB math.
And IB math. Okay. All right, Mr.
Yeah,
Mena.
so we're still working on trying to determine what the demand is for that. So if we do approve this, it is to move forward with books, but obviously we're not going to make any purchases until we figure out that we have some demand, right? And then the minimum requirements for attendance in the class is still required. The minimum numbers,
Yes.
Regardless of whether we approve this or not, is going to still be required. Okay, thank you.
And Mr. O'Connor.
So, following along those lines, is there a cost implication with something like this?
There will be, once the determination is made to run the course. It would be purchasing the books and the supplies. It's just part of a teacher's assignment, so there wouldn't be any additional staffing.
So it's just books and,
Right.
So it's minimal.
Correct.
Okay, so the process is to approve this so it can be something that's advertised as a new course, and then once that is, once it is established that we have the numbers, we get the books, correct? Okay,
Correct.
perfect. All right, if there are additional questions that board members have prior to the next meeting, if you could get them to Dr. Matthews, and then this will come back at our the first meeting in December. Thank you for being here and for answering our questions.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Polonsky.
And then we have a second new course that Dr. Weber will present as well.
This is a collaboration between Ms. Linda Fairland, Mr. Michael Ziegler, and Ms. Hattie McGuire, English teachers at Novi High School. would like to propose that Novi High School begin offering an English 12 literature and science course for students beginning in the fall of 2018 at Novi High School. There is a population of students who excel in the sciences and by their senior year have decided upon a career path in one of the sciences. The English 12 literature and science course parallels the current 12th grade English. The common assessments require the same skills and meet the same standards but reflect a scientific focus. This comes before the board tonight as information and discussion and will come back before the board for approval at the December 7, 2017 meeting.
All right. Comments or questions from the board on this item? Mr. O'Connor?
Yeah, I do have a question. My only concern, obviously this is along the same lines from my perspective as the math. We're targeting kids that are interested in the sciences. My only concern with this one is, and if you could address it, in college, the engineers hated it, but they always had to take the humanities course. Mm-hmm. Okay, it was the worst thing they had to go through, so there had to be some literature. So with this course, I understand there's going to be more of a science focus, but are these kids going to get, the Shakespeare's and the... Explain to me what lit is for sciences. I guess that's my only concern. I don't want this to be, a science egghead thing that they're reading all the time. They really need to get some humanities. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So this is not a science class. I would not be teaching science. We would be teaching literature and language through the lens of science, looking at how some scientific discoveries and new technological advances have impacted literature over time. We will still be reading classic literature, H.G. Wells, some Charles Darwin, to look at some of the reactions to his theories through literature. So yes, it is still a literature course. The only difference between this English 12 class and the current English 12 that I teach is the literature that we're looking at and the lens through which we look at it.
Thank you.
Here are some of the examples. Mr. O'Connor,
Feel free to.
War of the Worlds, Jurassic Park,
Island of Dr. Moreau.
Island of Dr. Moreau. So it's still literature, it just has a scientific bend as opposed to the current course selection.
Cool. Thank you.
And this, on the same line as Mr. O'Connor's previous piece, no additional FTE on this particular course. It would be textbook, but no FTE.
Starting to get worried that Dr. Weber's been agreeing with me the last 10 minutes. This is...
I thought you were agreeing with him.
I'm concerned about this proposal now. So.
There's something hidden in there that you have to...
I don't know what's going on.
It has to be.
I just have a couple quick questions. One, because 12th grade English we have the mandate by the state what that's supposed to look like. You're saying that this will still suffice for that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Which I think is wonderful.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also know that there used to be a class at the high school on science fiction that was very popular and really taught like a very high level. But Mr. Ziegler taught it. My son took it, and it was a tough class. I mean, lots of essays, lots of writing. I like the idea that you're engaging kids with maybe materials that, I mean, like, this isn't what I would necessarily pick up and read, but it would engage some kids that maybe otherwise would be sitting in their 12th grade English class.
And we're predicting 2 sections, I believe, off the get-go to see what we think could fill with that with the students that we have.
Yeah, because we've had a big drop-off in all the extra English classes that we used to have because we're not allowed to have them anymore, right? So there's not
There's a little bit of flexibility in there, but I think the way that our English department's approaching it, tying it to the standards that they would have, just using a different text set for that, I think is really brilliant. And the collaboration that they used to put this together is fantastic as well.
Mrs. Lipzinski.
Yeah, the one thing I appreciated when you look through the proposal or whatever that's called, they've got each of the books listed with what the theme is, and that helped me understand how they tied to science. Because I did come in and kind of look through, and one of them's got vampires in it, and I'm kind of like, how does that really fit in with science? But this was helpful, and so I'm just suggesting to my other board members, if you're kind of wondering about how science can be literature, because my husband's first reaction when we were talking about it was, they're going to learn how to read scientific journals, and that'll be really helpful when they get to college. And then I'm like, that is nonfiction. This is fiction. This is literature, and so.
And what they chose was, I think, was interesting in the sense like Victorian era, when the whole notion of science was really coming to light in that way, and how then the literature corresponded with that, trying to explain things that up to that point hadn't been explained in a scientific way. And I think some of the choices that you all made on that are interesting, and the kind of conversations you could have in that class would be really profound.
Mrs. Hood.
I was just going to add, when I looked through the description of the books too, I didn't come over to read the books or look at them, but with this and really the medical math class, I think it is, they provide two good options for our kids for more individualized curriculum and learning, and to if some kids have thought, oh, I'm not crazy about English, this gives them a different look at it. So I think they're both wonderful ideas.
Just one quick question about the Lexile level of the books. Are they comparable to what they'd be reading in the other 12th grade classes? I looked at those and it was like 7-10. I don't know really what that means. It seems like that's a 7th grade 10 months.
It doesn't actually equate quite like that. It is a low high school level, because the variety of students, we will have students with a variety of literacy skills coming into the class. The books that you're looking at with those lower Lexiles would be used in a literature circle setting. So not every single student would read that. So those books were specifically chosen with a lower Lexile to be able to reach the students with more difficulties with their reading comprehension. Those literature circles are independent reads, so they would read the books independently, and then small group discussion and use them toward our writing assignments. So just to make them accessible to all students, there was a variety chosen.
Great. Okay, thanks. That answers my question. Other questions?
The only way to read a scientific journal is with caffeine.
Okay.
Thanks for that.
And probably not in your high school class, right? All right, thank you very much. Thanks for being here, answering our questions. Again, if you have additional questions that come up, please get them to Dr. Matthews, and he can see that they get to the appropriate people for answers before our next meeting. We will come back to vote on this at the first meeting in December. Next is our summer tax levy. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and I will turn to Ms. Minnick.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. The item you have before you this evening is our annual request for the City of Novi and the City of Wixom to collect our 2018 summer taxes. Historically, the district has levied 50% of the total levy in the summer, and in order to continue to do so, we must have an agreement with the City of Novi and the City of Wixom in place by December 31st. The actual levy has not occurred yet. That happens in the spring, but the approval to collect a portion of the taxes in the summer must occur before the end of the year. This is presented tonight for review and will be brought back to the November 16th board meeting for approval.
Not till the 16th?
That's for next
Oh, I'm
meeting.
sorry. At the December board meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, December, that's right.
The first meeting in December.
The first meeting.
Okay. I thought we had one before that.
We do.
Okay. Okay. Is there discussion on our summer tax resolution?
Just
Mrs. Glubzinski.
Yeah. We have flexibility. The percentage doesn't have to be 50-50. It can be higher in the summer and lower in the winter, or
That's correct.
But for our taxpayers, we've always felt that it's good public relations, I guess you could say, to spread it evenly. And that's been our strategy over the years. And so I support continuing with that practice.
Any discussion? No, I think it's a wise move for our taxpayers, and I think as long as we're able to do that, it does make sense to honor our history with that. Mr.
Can I ask you a quick question? I'm still scratching my head here, trying to figure out why Wixom is on here. Our school district, unless something's changed, do we border inside of Wixom anywhere?
We have a portion of our attendance boundary in Wixom. It may be a small portion of a transfer property where historically some property has transferred between the districts. I would have to look a little bit further into that for you. But
It's not,
couldn't
I wouldn't
tell
put
you.
it high on your priority list, but I just, I've been following this map for a long time, and this one just caught me by surprise. I'd be interested in finding
Well,
out.
I will look,
what-
I will get back to
Yeah,
you,
okay.
the area of residence.
All right. There's no additional questions on the summer tax levy. That will also come back to us our first meeting in December. Next, we have our policy updates and revisions. Dr. Maddox.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The Governance and Policy Committee has reviewed the following policies for revisions and updating and is bringing them to the board tonight for information and discussion. And as you see, there's 16 policies listed that came from our Neola updates. Several of them are very similar. Policies 1421, 3121, 4121, and 8142 all deal with criminal history checks, and there's just minor revisions in there. One of them deals with, I think, administrative criminal history checks, and so it's a new policy. There's also 3 policies on discipline of staff, both administrator, professional staff, and support staff. And you see the policies that are listed there, and we did have a Governance and Policy Committee meeting that reviewed these policies, and Ms. Glebzinski might have some additional information.
Right. If you go to board book, in the committee, I've written committee minutes, which are very brief, but the committee notes, if you open those, have all of the policies listed and a 1 or 2 sentence summary of what changed in the policy, or whether or not it was new, or whether or not it was required by law. So I know this is rather cumbersome, but that summary is out there in board book, if that's helpful for you as you review the policies. And, oh, I'm sorry, and there was a question that was directed to me about why are we spending the time to update these if we're going to switch to Lusk Albertson for our policies? And there's going to probably be a 6-month transition process as we get the templates from Lusk Albertson and start adapting those to our practice for our district. In the meantime, we can't let our policies lapse as as laws change. So that's why we're gonna probably be a dual system. I'd say maybe through next June, or probably through next June.
Mr. O'Connor.
So were these policy changes that you summarized, were they changes made by the policy committee, or were they changes recommended by Neola?
All Neola revisions that we reviewed, and if there were things that we had a choice to check a box, we referred to Dr. Matthews in terms of what our practice is or what made sense for our district. So these all came to us from Neola. We didn't create anything new.
Thank you.
I do have to say, I thought we had decided not to adopt 2418 at all. Am I incorrect?
Yeah, I have
That
the
is
note
correct.
in my note. The committee recommends not to adopt the policy as it is redundant. It's covered in 2414.
I was trying to find your minutes and I could not locate them, so I apologize. You said that they are.
I believe they were submitted to Mrs. Holly, and I thought she'd posted them.
I do not believe they made it into the book.
Okay.
We will verify that and kind of highlight that for the board tomorrow and the week.
Thank you.
Yeah, normally it would appear, I think, right here, approved minutes.
So what are we saying? We're saying that 2414 is what we're approving, and we're
No, we already
scrapping-
have 2414. We don't need to have 2418 because it's redundant with what we already have in 2414. Our sex education is in a separate class. It's part of our health curriculum.
Correct.
Is that right? So, and we cover that in 2414.
One of the things in 18 talked about how sex education is not mandated for graduation, that it's an elective. So I'm just trying to...
2418 would be an elective sex education course, and at this point, we don't believe that that's necessary.
So we would like to not adopt that one at all.
Correct. And so when this comes back to the board for approval at our next board meeting, we would not include that policy as
We'll include 2414. Okay, so my question then is, on 2414, are we also saying that it's not mandatory for graduation, or are we saying that it is?
There is a reproductive health component that is required for graduation, and 2414 satisfies that. Students can opt out of that if they wish, based on their parental and student desire, but reproductive health is a required graduation requirement.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there other questions about any of those individual policies? While we have Mrs. Glidzinski here with her notes. All right, seeing none, next is our next opportunity for comments from the audience. I see no one in the audience except Mrs. Holly. Would you like to address the board on anything within our jurisdiction this evening?
Thank you for the invitation.
Okay. All right, so next we have our superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. To start the superintendent's report, I'd like to report that the Novi High School girls volleyball team won their state semifinal match this evening, 3-0 over DeWitt, and will play Saturday afternoon at 2 p.m. for the state championship. We are also officially 1/4 of the way through this school year. Parent-teacher conferences are wrapping up, and first quarter report cards are in the process of being sent to parents. So far this year, we have seen our Novi High School marching band finish 4th in the Michigan Competing Band State Championship. Frog Force 502 robotics team and their 3D printed hand project has expanded into the elementary schools and has picked up a new partner with the Novi Public Library. Our Novi High School boys cross country team won the regional and finished 8th in the state meet. We hired a new assistant superintendent for human resources, Mr. Gary Kinzer. The Novi Educational Foundation held a successful back-to-school pancake breakfast in September. We launched a mental health awareness campaign in collaboration with the University of Michigan Depression Center. Novi High School varsity football team won back the baseline jug by defeating Northville, and that's probably why Ms. Stevenson's not here this evening. We received 3 new school buses in the district, courtesy of the 2014 bond and the generosity of our Novi voters. Our 8th graders completed another successful trip to Washington, D.C. Village Oaks has welcomed a new principal, Dr. O'Feely. We have over 24 new teachers who became part of the Wildcat family. Our Novi High School boys soccer team won the district. Novi High School had 39 national merit semifinalists, the largest number of any high school in the state of Michigan. And our Novi High School girls volleyball team has won their state semifinal match and will play for the state championship on Saturday. And that's just in the first 1/4 of this school year. And so it has been quite a year so far. There are also some interesting pieces of legislation that I would encourage our community to learn about. Senate Bill 584 through 586 changes the concealed carry law in Michigan. In my opinion, that legislation proposed is not good for schools, and I would encourage our families to learn about this legislation. I would also encourage our families to contact the legislatures about this issue to voice their opinion. Novi High School will host an open house on November 28th from 6 to 8 p.m. where families can learn more about our amazing high school and all that it has to offer. And so that's my report for this year.
Terrific. Next, we have our administrative reports. Ms. Smittick.
I gave a very lengthy administrative report last time, and I have no report tonight.
Okay. All right. And Mr. Kinzer.
Last meeting, I shared some of my initial activities to transition into my position, and I'm going to continue that a little bit tonight. I've been able to visit Parkview, Orchard Hills, and Novi Meadows. Spent a considerable amount of time in each of those buildings in the last week. Had meetings with Kathy Ferris, our nurse, to learn a bit about medical procedures in the district. Darby Hoppenstadt to learn about MTSS implementation. And I've attended some trainings, one offered by the Michigan Negotiators Association, one offered by the Metro Bureau, and attended my first OASPA, Oakland Association of School Personnel Administrators meeting today.
Okay. Thank you. Good to hear that you're diving in. And Mr. Weber.
We have a will
Dr.
to speak up. It's fine. Will Heininger spoke to 2,200 folks at Novi High School on November 6th. So 2,000 students and about 200 staff members. It was very well received. Around mental health. On Monday, we currently have over 110 people, parents in our community, registered for a will to speak up. Will will be there. Also, Dr. Parikh from the U of M Depression Center speaking with our parents from 6:30 to 8 o'clock around mental health issues. Today I was fortunate to lead a global webinar for Atlas Rubicon around our 7-year curriculum mapping journey. Every continent was present except folks, no one from Antarctica. So I was hoping a penguin would chime in there, so that was great. Additional courses will be coming up before the board in the next board meeting. These are in areas of writing, serving students with special needs, and innovative opportunities for kids. So keep your eyes open for those. And attended an event last night sponsored by the U of M Depression Center and hosted by Ann Arbor Schools around youth suicide to learn more about those issues. So thank you.
All right. And next we have committee reports. Does anyone have a committee report? Mr. O'Connor.
Yeah, I just wanted to let the board know that there's going to be a request. I think it's going through your office. Dr. Matthews from the Oakland County School Boards Association. We've approved bylaws for 2017-2018. There aren't a lot of changes in it. The email should be coming to you. They're requesting that it be put on the agenda sometime in December before the actual member districts vote in January. This is one of those ceremonial things where, you know, however we vote, we're one of 28 districts in terms of approving the bylaws. There aren't a lot of changes in the bylaws from the last couple of years. The biggest change is that the OCSBA is now going to become a 401c4 with the ability to do my advocacy.
Yeah.
That's the biggest change.
I actually think that email may have came through today. So I appreciate a little bit additional explanation of it. So we will get that on the agenda for one of the meetings in December. And Mrs. Glebinski, you have committee reports as well?
Right, the governance committee met November 6th, and we will follow up on getting the minutes and the notes to you. The committee has continued to look at the operating procedures, and we are in the final stretch of proofreading, so those will be going to the entire board, and in December we'll start our discussion about how we want to proceed with our board operating procedures.
All right, terrific. And
There was no finance committee meeting.
that was the last time. Terrific. Okay, next we have board communication. Communication from the board. Mr. O'Connor.
I would like to suggest, not to be premature about this, but no matter what happens on Saturday with our volleyball team, that they're invited to our December 7th meeting for recognition.
I think that could probably be arranged.
Yeah, provided their banquet's not that night.
Provided the banquet.
So, yeah,
and if their banquet is that night,
we can have
I'll
the
be
next
at the
one,
banquet.
but definitely in December, we will recognize them. It's been a fun journey with them this year, again. Mrs. Klebzinski.
Right, I was able to attend the coffee with the superintendent at the library, and the topic was bullying, and I thought there was a really strong turnout from parents in the district, and a lot of great dialogue and presentation by Mrs. Schreiner. And those coffees themselves, I think, are serving a good purpose, and I appreciate that. And
Excuse me, what was the focus? I mean, I know but were there any
it was
specific issues
what the
that came
district
up?
is doing about bullying prevention. Or prevention's the wrong word. I learned that. But what our strategies are at the different grade levels, and how that is. How effective it is, and also there was a really nice role play that showed, like, you might be an observer, you might be the victim, the antagonist, and help. And so the students are doing these role plays to kind of understand, if you're in this role, what are some possible strategies you could use to prevent that bullying, or when it's appropriate, it's not tattling when you involve an adult. So I thought it was really constructive. She tested my memory there. Hopefully I did pretty well. I did go to Orchard Hills a week ago. Orchard Hills and Village Oaks have Playworks, visiting their schools once a week throughout this year. And the Playworks folks are helping the noon aides and the staff in terms of how to pull kids in who might be on the fringes, and also conflict resolution and maybe more organization in those activities in the district that the teachers aren't supervising. And it was very interesting to observe the Playworks person working with the kids and teaching them new games, but also talking to the noon aides about how it's changed the atmosphere on the playground, and what strategies they're going to have that are going to be new for when recesses indoors. So I would encourage you, even if your building isn't Village Oaks or Orchard Hills, that sometime during this year you find out what week they're at one of those schools and drop in, for 10 or 15 minutes and just observe what's going on the playground during lunch hour. So that was really interesting. And also, I just want to say hats off to Bill Roos for the media publicity and advance notice with the Miss Volleyball announcement that was Monday. It was well attended by media. The coverage has been awesome. And also, it's just a real honor to have Erin O'Leary as Miss Volleyball 2017. But it's a team effort, and I thought Brian Gordon did a really nice job sharing the fact that you can't achieve that without a supportive district, coaches, team. And so it was really neat to have the senior class there witnessing that celebration.
Other board members? Mr. Miller?
Sure. So I'm a regular attendee of the athletic booster meetings, and I do attend band booster meetings from time to time. I just want to let you know that the attendance on these things is still outstanding. Still have a lot of parents involved in those meetings. And just something to let you guys know, recently the athletic boosters actually made an investment. They're going to I don't know if the word donate would be correct, but they're basically investing in some athletic hallway upgrades. So you're going to see at some point some folks coming in and starting to do some artwork along the walls of the athletic hallway. So the planning is currently happening as we speak. But it's sort of if you guys ever come in through the back end, it's a little bit bland still, so that'll look forward to seeing that spruced up quite a bit.
Will match the exterior weight room look, right?
Yeah.
Such a fabulous look. Additional, do you have anything else?
That's it for now.
Great. Good to hear about the attendance. Mr. Cook?
Couple of things. November has been officially declared Scholarship Month by the Michigan Department of Treasury. So all month long they'll be posting different things on scholarship on their social media. So I know a lot of our kids are out there trying to get money for school, so it's a good resource that they can take a look and try and get involved in that. Also on Saturday, the culmination of a lot of hard work for a lot of kids in our community comes to a head with the qualifying tournaments for both the First Tech Challenge, which are our middle school kids, and our First Lego Leagues and Junior First Lego Leagues, so all our lower elementary and upper elementary kids. First Tech Challenge had the Frog Force is sponsoring a tournament at the middle school for the First Tech Challenge and for the Junior First Lego League. There are a number of qualifying tournaments going on throughout the state, and my team is out in South Lyon for First Lego League. So we got a lot of kids that put in a lot of hard work, and a lot of parents who have pulled their hair out trying to keep the kids focused. But it's all coming to a culmination here this week just for the qualifying, and hopefully a lot of them, hopefully the top 25% in the state end up being mostly from Novi, but they'll continue on for a December tournament. So
Can you tell us where it's at, South Lyon?
that's at Millennium Middle School.
Is it an all-day event?
All day.
All-day event.
It's
Okay.
also at Novi Middle School.
Novi Middle School is the
okay.
First Tech Challenge, and that's an all-day event also.
Okay, and there's lots going on this weekend. Other board communication? Okay, I do have some, so I hope you'll bear with me. I'll try and finish quickly. I just want to give a couple highlights of the 8th grade field trip that I thought you guys would be interested in knowing about. One that you wouldn't necessarily be interested in, but my group of kids, my group of guys was fabulous this year. I just want to give a shout out to Murphy's Men. They were really the best group. They were always on time. I didn't lose anyone. It was fantastic. They were great to spend the week with, or the few days with. It seemed like a week. I do want to say that the middle school represented just really well at a couple of occasions. I shared this at the Board Governance Committee meeting, but I will just share with you that at the Air Force Memorial, there was a commissioning ceremony taking place. It was very windy that day, and they were trying to play the national anthem on a phone with a thing, and they couldn't hear it, and our kids started singing, and so they sang the national anthem for the ceremony, which I thought was really touching and something to just really be proud of. And then we also had a group that encountered an honor flight of World War II veterans at the World War II Memorial, and they clapped them out into the memorial, I believe. So just some really neat things that happened on that trip for our kids, and also just representing Novi. And most of them wore their Novi gear, so people knew where we were from, which was great. We had fantastic weather. We had a fire alarm early one morning. That was a little but that was the only exception of eventful. There was no sickness, which was good. So I'm just really proud of our students, our staff that made that all possible, and I just want to give a shout out to Mr. Fenchel, whose organizational skills are always crucial to the success of the trip every year, as well as his incredibly dry wit, which we all appreciate as well, because there's a lot of laughter alongside the kids. I was at the MASB conference this last weekend. The delegate assembly, which I attended, was it was really well attended. I will say there was really thoughtful discourse on the Michigan Department of Education and its future in light of how the MISB might best impact positive outcomes with that. There's some changes that are coming down. I think some of you might know of. They're talking about getting rid of the Michigan Department of Education. They're talking about appointing the Michigan Department of Education. There's a lot of different things. So there was some really thoughtful discourse on that, and a proposal to change what the committee had come up with to basically say we need to study what's going on in the country. How are other how are other departments of education that are doing well and functioning well and aiding outcomes? How are they doing that? And so there was a push to that, and that was really the only change to what you guys probably saw in the handbook if you had a chance to take a look at that. There were great keynote speakers on innovation, opportunity, and achievement. There were sessions on board governance and legislation that were interesting and informative. And then I gave some documents to Sheila now, but they're actually all going to be online from the event. So I'll have Sheila post them from the ones that I think that might be interesting to you, the ones that I attended. Those will be posted online. There was a really great one from the Okemos School District on diversity and what they have done as a board and then trickled down as a district to embrace the diversity they have, where they're a district that's very similar to us in terms of their numbers and their population, their demographics, and some of what they've done. And they had their board president and vice president all the way down to students. So they had all the different levels, kind of how the strategies that were developed by the board then kind of were implemented at the different levels. So it was a really interesting and informative workshop that really, for me, it was the last one I went to, and it just kind of was the highlight. So I just wanted to mention that. I also wanted to say that I went to the Novi Youth Assistance Breakfast this past Tuesday, and just really wonderful to see. I got to see Dennis's wife there, and just the community collaboration that is around that group is really wonderful. They did set up a scholarship in Julie Abrams' name, which was very nice, and her daughter was there to kind of talk a little bit about Julie and what her passions and why her passions was students and tutoring. So that's what the scholarship is for. It's to support the tutoring of students that maybe come in that are struggling, and it's to give them some additional support. So that was a great event. So one last thing that I want to kind of wrap up for the board. Way back in January, at our January 12th meeting this year, we voted to continue our contract with Troon Law Firm. That vote took place after concerns were expressed by a board member about the need for separate counsel, but in order to allow the vote to move forward, a suggestion was made that the issue be looked into at a later date. So as a newly elected president, I noted the suggestion. I was reminded of on a couple occasions later in the year by board members who appeared eager to look into alternative counsel. But because we'd approved counsel for the year, had a policy that appeared to identify our right to hire an attorney for the district, not multiple attorneys, and had sufficient other work that was more timely and its importance. I kind of put that on the back burner, and did keep the one board member that had expressed interest kind of in the know on that. In September, I did outline a process for the board in an email and requested feedback on this and 2 additional documents, one with questions for potential law firms, and the other a set of criteria upon which we would rate those potential law firms. The feedback I received from the board was minimal on this, and in hindsight, that would have been the appropriate time to bring the matter for discussion by the full board, but I interpreted the lack of response to be one of support. So instead of seeing the red flags, I continued to move forward with the process and the timelines that I'd laid out within that. An important piece of this was for the board to rank the criteria in order to score the responses of the selected firms, but my response to that was also minimal. So that raised a red flag high enough for me to see that, and I received an email from a board member stating they did not support a change. So subsequently, I reached out to 2 other board members to ask where they stood on pursuing this as an option. At this point, it became clear I'd misread the intent of the board. I went back and reviewed the January 12th meeting, which was my first as president, and it's clear even then that there were board members who voiced a hesitancy in pursuing this as an option. So I just want to apologize to the board for misreading its intentions in January. I've made a note that in any future, if we have suggestions that are made around this table, that they should potentially just be added automatically for discussion items at later dates, not just assume that we have support on those. So should the board decide to pursue this at any point, our policy, which we revised on October 5th, allows us to hire additional counsel. I want to thank both Dr. Matthews and Ms. Holly for their assistance with the initial efforts in this, and also to those board members who took the time to supply feedback at any point. Additionally, much of the work's already been done, so if we do decide to pursue this as an option, even come January, a lot of the work has already been completed. And I do think we can do that if we have an issue that comes up that we're really just not comfortable with our current legal firm. So that ends my board communication.
So I'm confused. You're saying you made a decision not to continue this process because you talked to board members and there were 4 board members that said they weren't interested in pursuing this?
What happened, Dennis, was the feedback that I needed to pursue it, I wasn't getting. So when I reached out to board members to ask kind of, well, what's, should we, if we're moving forward with this, I need, and I got basically, well, we changed the policy. I don't really support a change. There isn't any need for one. And I went back and reviewed the meeting, and another board member that I reached out, she said, well, I still feel the same the way I did at the 12th. I don't see a need for it. So I think that initial meeting, I did go back and watch it, and there were people that were saying then that they didn't support moving forward. So, there were a lot of surprises at that meeting. So not that I'm making excuses for misreading the support that we had, because I know we've done things with head nods before. I know you made that comment. We have done that before, but I don't think I got a very good read that evening and pursued something that there is not support for amongst the board.
Yeah, I guess my concern is that what we're doing here is really not following our decision-making process and the way we do things. If we want to be transparent with the public, why can't, rather than you calling board members to ask them how they feel about an issue, why don't we have it as an agenda item and we discuss it and we vote and then we move on? I thought that's how we do our decision-making. That's my concern. It's more of a transparency thing.
So would you like
it was at that January 12th meeting, whether the head nods were misread or not misread, we said on camera to the public that we were going to pursue this. Now, if we don't want to, that's fine, but I think we should let the public know and vote on it accordingly.
Okay, so would you like to have it on the meeting on December?
Yeah, I would like to.
December? Okay.
We can have a discussion, and I don't think we need to do it twice. We'll just vote on it and go from there, just that the public understands.
So discuss and take action in the same meeting?
Not to
pursue it.
In this case, I don't think there's a reason to do it twice.
I'm not sure there's a reason to vote. There would be a reason to discuss, but perhaps not to vote.
Okay.
So, okay, well, we can put that on the agenda for discussion at the first meeting.
Well, it may be, I'll talk with you about if it should be an action or an information.
I think just information discussion.
We'll have that on the agenda in December.
Okay. Without any further discussion, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Hood. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving, everyone.